Yes. All right. So today's session is focusing on securing our environment with Microsoft. So we have the continuous conversation about ensuring that our environments in the cloud and our hybrid environments are secure for our customers. And when we take a look at that, one of the ways or the key things that we should be focusing on is how Microsoft considers the defense in depth methodology. And what this really points to is the different layers of which we have Microsoft, not just Microsoft, but security being implemented throughout our technical infrastructure. So essentially, the defense in depth design um, leverages different security measures to protect your organization's assets at different layers. So it ensures that when one set of controls fails at one level, there is another level that is ready to defend your IT system. And really, what this provides is a way for us to slow down an attack path when it comes to ensuring that our security is paramount. And then, of course, ensuring that we can basically remediate threats at one level before it permeates through to the data or the highest level there. So the 7 layers that are involved in this is the physical security, and this would encompass if you have a on-premises environment or even the hardware that's being used for the remote access for your environments. You have identity and access, which is now more the perimeter of our environments now that cloud enables remote collaboration, remote work, and the perimeter is no longer within the confines of a physical space behind a network or network firewall. Then we have the perimeter, which will still be encompassed if we have an on-premises environment. The network layer, the compute that runs on top of that network, and the applications and data that is stacked on the compute resources. To recap, then, we have the security tools that have been built in across the layers in Microsoft, where we have identity and access management, which comes in with Azure Active Directory, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, now Entra ID. And essentially, you have capabilities like role-based access control, you have MFA, you have identity protection that ensures that your users can get the right amount of access and to help you minimize risks that are associated with, say, for example, misuse of admin privileges, or if there is any attacks on identities. Your environment may take longer or may be prevented from infiltration if there is such an attack. So take, for example, now in our ecosystem where as resellers, we have access to our customers' environments. One of the ways that we can ensure that either the customer is more secure, whether they feel that they need more security from their side, that you maybe they want to have their users managing their environment, or you have collaboration from external users in the environment. Privileged identity management is one of the key tools to pay attention to, and we're going to take a little bit of a look at that when it comes to ensuring that we have just enough access, which means we have the least privileges able to perform the task necessary, and then just in time access where we can enable our users to have access or administrative access to the environment for only a set period of time. This is very handy when it comes to ensuring that access from third parties that may be managing the environment, or for you as the managers of the environment, will be able to just ensure that the identities don't have admin privileges when they are not needed, to prevent any kind of unneeded access and therefore any kind of identity-based attack in the environment. And you have MFA and role-based access control. MFA just enables you to have more than one ways to authenticate to ensure that the person who is signing in or who says they are signing in is actually the person that is for the identity. A role-based access control gives you your users access to the different roles that will be performing various tasks in their environment. When we look at application and data protection, we consider that you have encryption in Azure, both at rest and in transit. And of course, you have key vaults that will be protecting your various keys, certificates, etc. You have network security, where we look at virtual networking, how to secure virtual networks or VPNs, to have secure transfer between our environments, application gateways and firewalls that are embedded into the Azure platform, or you can use third-party firewalls as well from the marketplace, depending on the need. And then, of course, distributed denial of service protection can also be utilized in the network security aspect. We have threat protection and security management, which all falls on the Defender for Cloud, which we'll be doing a short demo on today as well. And of course, under these, you have different tools like the Cloud Workload Protection and Sentinel that does active threat hunting, vulnerability management, and remediation. And of course, just take a look at Entra ID, just to zoom in on it. You have hybrid cloud authorization and authentication, as we mentioned before. You can use Azure AD for your authorization and authentication. And of course, when you link that to your on-premises environment through Entra ID Connect, you can have that same authentication and authorization to your cloud resources. You can also have B2B collaboration. So you can have users that are outside of your environment as guests in your Azure AD tenant, so they can perform whatever roles or tasks are needed. So for example, Adriana Corp identifies Kyle Corp as an IT service provider that they want to have set up some resources for them in Azure. And so Kyle Corp already has their own Entra ID. What they can do is invite Kyle Corp into Adriana Corp's tenant. So Kyle Corp keeps his own login, can log into the environment as Kyle from Kyle Corp. And then, of course, you can perform whatever tasks are assigned based on the rules that are there. You have risk-based conditional access, which is a mixture of basically conditional access and MFA, where you can basically link these two together to ensure that a set of conditions are met before your users can be authenticated into the environment. And of course, privileged identity management, which we mentioned previously, for ensuring that you have different rules only assigned to the users when it is necessary. So let's take a look at the privileged identity management. So just here, we can go to Enter ID Privilege Management, or we can sign up. We can search for it here because I've been there before. I will just come to here. So we can manage access. And of course, you'll see various rules that will be eligible for assignment to different users. So as soon as this comes up, we can check on that. Let's give it a second to load. All right, so we have a set of rules here. These are all of the built-in rules for Azure. And for example, we want to go with something that they don't have just yet. So billing administrator. So we'll realize that we have a set of assignments here. So you can add assignments. When you have eligible assignments, this is when the users that are going to be assigned the specific rule need to perform an action to use the rule. So for example, we're going to add an assignment. And we're going to add this person. So you'll see the assignment type, eligible or active. When it is eligible, they don't have permanent access to this role. So this person will only have access to the role between a specified time and date, and it can end as soon as you require it. So Barbara has come into Adriana Corp, and she's going to be performing a project for 2 months. So on the 24th of December, this project should be finished right in time for Christmas. And when you assign this rule to Barbara, you will see an eligible assignment come up for this user. Now, when this person logs in, they will be able to see their eligible user. They have the option to request an approval or to activate that from their portal. When they activate that, they have use of it for the time frame that is there, and after that, they will lose access. If you were supposed to have an active assignment, that is one that is permanently assigned. So the users that are assigned those roles, they don't have a start time or end time, and they have full access to all of the tasks that are available under that role for all of the time that they are assigned that specific role. So some of the best practices that we will be considering is one, MFA, as we mentioned before, in order to ensure that users are compliant with their environment and they are who they say they are. We want to ensure that they can verify their identity using something that they have, they own, or something that they know. So for example, we have multi-factor authentication with Azure, one of the main methods of MFA is now the Authenticator app. The Microsoft Authenticator app is tied into your Azure portal. So when you sign up, when you log in and you are prompted to do MFA, one of the options you have is to use your Authenticator app. Once you register your account with the Authenticator app, whenever you log in, you are sent a prompt, whether it is to verify a number on the screen or to select something that is on the screen when you log in that is the same on your app. You can utilize that for the MFA. You have some best practices that involve how we actually create the environment in the first place. And one of those things is the blueprints. So just like with blueprints that architects or engineers will use, it's basically a plan of action on how to build up whatever project or infrastructure that they're making. It's the same thing with Azure. You have a set of repeatable steps and, of course, resources, that you implement that adheres to a particular organization standards, their patterns, and their requirements. You also have the built-in tools like Defender for Cloud and Sentinel that are there to continuously detect and respond to threats in the environment, and not only detect and respond to threats, but you have automated responses and remediation actions that can be taken and are recommended by the tool. And of course, you can use threat modeling during application design to ensure that you have eliminated some of the ways that design errors can occur from early on in the development process. So when we move on to securing our networking, we think about on-premises. What is the first set of things that come to mind on premises when we are securing networks or networking persons in the chat? Ricardo, Oreen.
Think about physical, limit access to your data center.
Right.
So to start with that.
Thank you, Oreen.
Yes, I agree. You think about the different layers, the on-prem layers. So you think about your endpoint security, right? You think about your perimeter security, right? Mainly, and how you deal with the other policies to prevent USB ports and all these different stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, those are the first things come to mind.
Thanks. That's a good input. Delani.
In terms of networking, I think about using VLANs and non-standard ports.
Great. That's good too. Definitely. So all of those things are definitely some of the things that we consider when we're on premises. Segmentation, restricting physical access, protecting our perimeter, and all of these things, right? So when it comes to Azure, of course, we don't have the physical component anymore, but we still have the layers on top of that we are going to be focusing on. So we have things like network security groups. Anybody familiar with those, with computing on Azure?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna call Kyle, All right. So network, so basically just yesterday, look at that.
To play in our rule, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So think of NSGs as you wouldn't say a firewall, but it has some capabilities of filtering network traffics from virtual networks on Azure and also the VNICs that are attached to the compute resources. So for example, you can block traffic or allow traffic to a virtual network itself that a virtual machine is inside of, or an app service is inside of, or something that uses a network interface card. And you can also put in rules at the NIC level. So you can have on the virtual network itself, you can have on the NIC as well. So you can have protection for different at different tiers or different levels. And if you have specific requirements for, say, one virtual machine inside of a virtual network that won't share the exact same rules, you can have different rules for those, so that you can have like denied access for filtering of your traffic in and out. You have private endpoints, and this is a very interesting one. So when you have stuff like database, right? And you have maybe a storage account that needs to access that database. There are two things in Azure. When that storage account will access that database, or another VM will access that database, the traffic is traveling on the virtual network that is on Azure, which is still technically on a public network. And even though you have data encrypted at rest and in transit, sometimes you don't want the information to be traversing over a public network. So what private endpoints do is this fun thing where it will take a virtual, it will take a virtual IP from the virtual network that you're trying to access the resource in. So for example, let us draw something. Let us illustrate. Guys, who can tell me how to illustrate on this thing? I did it last time, you know. I would draw up things in Teams.
Whiteboard. Look for the whiteboard. I'm sorry.
Whiteboard. Guys, I can't find a whiteboard. View. I can't find the whiteboard. That's not great. That's not great for me at all. Don't we have a pointer? We should have a pointer here. Hold on. You know what? Let's use this. There we go. All right. So we have a database here in this virtual network. Let's pretend that's a database with a cylindrical thing, right? How cylindrical are we getting that? Right. So let's say that's our database. And out here, we have a storage account that needs to access this database. What private endpoints does is provide our storage account projected into here with an IP address, a private IP address that is within this virtual network. So technically it is as if this resource is communicating directly inside of this network. So it's in a private network. It doesn't traverse the public internet. So whatever data is being transferred or being accessed by both of these applications are accessed as if they're in a private network and not traversing the public internet. So it eliminates traffic exposure to the public internet. We have DDoS protection, which is always on traffic monitoring. So this runs 24/7. If you see DDoS protection in your calculator and it says how many hours, do not put anything less than 730 because it's not going to run for anything less than that. Believe me, I figured that out the hard way. And of course, your application traffic patterns are monitored 24/7. So you're looking for indicators of DDoS attacks. And once those are detected in the environment, the Azure DDoS protection mitigates automatically against the attack. You have detailed reports from the DDoS protection in, I think it's about 5-minute increments. And then you get a complete summary of the attack after it ends. You can stream your logs to Sentinel, as we're going to talk about a little bit later, for monitoring and threat remediation. And then we also have threat monitoring with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which gives you multi-cloud coverage. I always talk about this. You can extend some of the security features, for example, Defender for servers across your multi-cloud environments, as well as your on-premises environments and in Azure. So with this, you are able to find and remediate vulnerabilities in your security posture. And not only do you find the weaknesses, you are also going to get recommendations from the Defender tooling to showcase the different steps that you'll need to take, or you can automatically have those done. So there's, like a button there that you can press that it says remediate actions, and it will automatically remediate for you, or it will provide the steps to remediate the threats that you have in your environment. And of course, as we mentioned before, by default, Azure has data encrypted at rest and in transit. And it also has double encryption for disks and storage accounts. And double encryption is just where you have 2 or more independent layers of encryption to prevent, compromise on any one layer. So it's like a defense in depth kind of strategy. And it will mitigate against configuration errors and the compromise of a single encryption key. And those encryption keys can be platform managed or customer managed. The platform managed keys, which are stored in the Azure Key Vault, will be generated, stored, and managed entirely by Azure. So you don't have to touch any of those. So remember, for those of you who do remember from our last session when we were setting up our storage account, and there was the option to do a platform managed key or a customer managed key. And of course, we had gone to the platform managed key, sorry, so that, we could just go through by default. But of course, with the customer managed key, they're created, deleted, managed, or administrated by the customers, and they're stored in a customer-owned key vault. So we would have had to create a key vault in that scenario had we selected to go with a customer-managed key. This is particularly useful if on-premises too, you have like a HSM, which is like a hardware security module that you want to move over to Azure for your encryption purposes. You can also use Key Vault as well to store certificates, passwords, tokens, API keys, etc. for interaction with like applications and so if applications need those keys or those secrets to operate, you can essentially have a managed identity assigned to your key vault to pull that from there to utilize for your application to utilize. So that's another key thing to think about with key vaults, especially in the development side. Then, of course, we have secure data transfer. We have VPN gateways, which we use here. ExpressRoute is for customers outside of the Caribbean. We don't have the infrastructure for ExpressRoute here. But the VPN gateways is just like the VPNs we know. It's a secure tunnel between 2 points or 2 sites that you can utilize to transfer data between your environments without having it exposed on the public network, of course. And then we mentioned Microsoft Sentinel. So Sentinel is a SIEM solution, security incident and management, an event management, solution. So Sentinel is Microsoft SIEM, and it is utilized when we're looking at threat hunting, resolving threats quickly. It is a unified solution, so it ingests data, it does the threat detection, it does ingestion from a various set of sources, and it can be optimized for your environment. You can ingest from on-premises, from other clouds, and of course, from Azure. With Sentinel, you can get your your ingested data from multiple sources, as you mentioned, from applications, from devices, on-premises, infrastructure, inside and outside of the cloud, and different users. You can have that ingested, and all the sources for your data continue to have log forwarding to the solution. Then Microsoft uses threat intelligence and machine learning to correlate incidents, alerts into different incidents, so that it can basically over time kind of train the model to identify what are the like the false alarms for threat hunting, what is normal for the environment, and of course to automate after that the responses to common issues that you have. You can use playbooks, which are essentially ways to automate the responses to the detected threats in the environment. And of course, it makes everything just easier to streamline how you identify issues, entity mapping to visualize how different threats are moving across the organization. And then, of course, the mitigation or remediation steps for the environment as that is. And of course, our final thing is Defender for Cloud that integrates with our Azure platform. It enables you to, as I mentioned before, get active threat detection for your cloud workloads. It has posture management. So it's a cloud workload posture management solution and a cloud threat security posture management and workload protection tool. So one, you can get an idea of what your governance and security posture looks like with the solution. And then of course you have the threat detection, vulnerability detection, and remediation side to Defender for Cloud. Let's take a look at that here. I'll be walking you through this guide. We'll basically be going through how to prevent, to detect, and to respond to the different threats and attacks from the Defender for Cloud workload. So let us work with the visibility of vulnerabilities within our environment. So the first thing we're looking at is reducing risks by prioritizing recommendations. All right, so the first thing we take a look at in our environment is that we have in the Defender for Cloud overview portal, or the portal itself, you have the tiles which show the different things that Defender is looking for. So you have security posture, you have compliance, you have workload protection, and other security measures here. We have the alerting. So we have what the alerts will be, what are the recommendations or how many recommendations we have. It gives you the total resources that have been assessed with the tool. And of course, it shows where we have other connections or protection for other cloud environments. So it shows our security posture for not only Azure, but other cloud workloads like AWS and GCP in this case. Moving a bit dicey today. All right, please give us a minute as we work through our technical difficulties. All right, so we are back. So we're going to go into the security posture tile, and we're going to click on the AWS option. It shows how many accounts and subscriptions are in our environment, recommendations that need to be done, what our secure score for each of our subscriptions and accounts are, what are the number of unhealthy resources, how many attack paths are there, and of course, the recommendations that will be done for this environment, and the same for our other environment here. So let's go to recommendations. So the first thing we're going to look at is an attack path. So let's see the third attack path that is here. It's saying that we have a VM that's internet exposed and has high vulnerabilities. It also has read permissions to a key vault, which means that if they have access to this VM, they have access to our key vault, and of course, secrets and keys and certificates, etc., will be vulnerable or exposed. So it gives you an overview of the traffic path and where the traffic flows to, and of course, the line of attack that will be taken to get to your precious golden data. So after it shows the attack path, you have the recommendation. You have the description of the recommendation, what to do in order to remediate this issue. then it will give you the set of remediation steps. So if you want to do this manually, as it says manual remediation, you have all of the steps outlined for you. So you don't have to bust your brain on what to do. They are all there. You also shows the affected resources. And as we can see, you have options to trigger a logic app, and this will basically be an automated response to a issue that you have. You can exempt this. So say, for example, this was maybe a false threat, then you could exempt it. You can also assign owner or change the owner and set an estimated time of remediation. But let's go to assign owner. So we're going to put in Irvin, and Irvin has to complete this by last year, right? You can have a grace period in which they can do the remediation, but of course, we're not going to do that because we want Irvin to finish this like yesterday. Of course, you have email notifications that is sent to a manager or to the owner of this remediation. And of course, you can set whatever timing is necessary and save. So once you've created the assignment, Irvin is going to get a notification popping up in his email that he needs to come over and perform this remediation step. On the virtual machine, we can check the recommendations on why the status of our VM is unhealthy. When we check on our findings and we check our attack path, see we have an EC2 instance has high severity vulnerabilities and read permissions to a key vault. This attack path here is showing here. So what this is basically a informational CVE. It's for compliance purposes, and you will have that available to you there. When we go under recommendations, we see what are the different things that we should be doing. So we can see the related recommendations. We should need to do an assessment for solution. Remediation steps will be here if needed to take. And of course, we can assign owners or trigger an automated response to this. Let's click on this attack path. So we realize that the storage account is vulnerable. We check on the insights, and it shows us that why this is problematic is that we have sensitive information types, credit card numbers and debit card numbers within this storage account. And so, of course, it will show you the information types and what the related issues there are. So that's a synopsis of going through the threat detection, what issues arise based off of the threat hunting that has been, or the vulnerability hunting that's been going on in the environment. And of course, we move on to checking on attack surfaces. So we have the internet exposed VMs that we were talking about earlier. There are a set of templates that we can utilize. to query what is exposed or what contains sensitive data. For this example, we just want to check what are the vulnerabilities that are there in the environment. So this is active, like threat hunting, of course. So once we do this, we can query basically from our environment, what are the specific workloads that have certain vulnerabilities, and it will pop up with that information. So it will come up with all of the storage accounts in the environment that has or fits this bill, and we can take a look at our recommendations. So we can do our remediation steps with a quick fix or a manual remediation. Remember, I spoke about that little button that we can press that will fix it automatically for us. So if we tap on quick fix, and the resource that we had selected before, it will automatically fix that. So the remediation, which is here, will be automatically performed for us. So we have that capability as well. Let's look at our compute, our networking, or data. We can see what is available in the environment. So we see that there are 0 here because there are none there. But of course, for those that are there, you will see their numbering or what is available. So you can go through and query what is in your environment, what is vulnerable, and of course, how you can remediate that yourself. So we're going through the same steps again, just to do it in different ways. What has sensitive data, what's exposed under this workload type. And of course, once we have that, we can see the results that have been filtered out. We can see all of the recommendations based on their severity. So what should we do with this workload based on the threat or the vulnerabilities that have been found? And of course, if there are any attacks on the workload or any pertinent alerts, they will be here listed out by severity. It will give timestamps on when these suspected attacks have been performed on this workload. And of course, from then we have a full view of the threats that are for the environment. So that's just a small look into the capabilities when it comes to threat detection and remediation with Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And it's time for favorite time. Everybody's favorite time. Trivia. Who has a trivia question for me? Who has a question for me based off of the information that we've just seen? Nobody has questions for me?
Any question? All right, Ricardo, the start a discussion. You mentioned the fence in depth.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is probably, your work, your experience. Have you come across any issues where with this defense in depth, customers might choose to use other third-party security solution, cloud solution that is, and it integrates with the Microsoft Azure without any issues.
No, and it's not to say that it probably wouldn't integrate. It's just that they have not necessarily used others. I have seen though where customers may have used actually like a marketplace offering for like, for instance, like firewalls in the environment and not like the native Azure firewall. But for other security, like a tooling that's probably like on premises that they want to integrate with their environment, I haven't seen that. But I've seen where persons have integrated marketplace offerings into the Azure, into their Azure environment.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so you know that it's my time to give questions now. Let's see. Jamar hasn't spoken today yet. Hi, Jamar. How are you? Jamar, are you with us?
I am
Hi.
good. Probably not the best
Awesome.
person to ask.
You're the best person to ask?
Still probably not the best person to ask because I
Uh-huh.
was busy.
Oh
um,
no. I'll give you an
when I was
easy
in and
one
out.
then. I'll give you
Okay.
an easy one. All right. So let us look back at the defense in depth. Can you tell me one of the layers in the defense in depth model? One of the areas that we want to protect in our environments. I can give you a hint.
Okay.
All right. So we were discussing Entra ID and what is associated with Entra ID. Oh my, it's in the name. I may have given you too much of a
What is associated with Entra ID?
yeah, it's in the name.
The ID.
Yeah. So um one of the layers that we want to protect would be
The ID.
right, identities. See,
Identity.
we're not doing too bad. Not doing too bad. All right. Someone else can give me another one of the layers that we want to protect with the defense in depth model.
Networking.
Networking,
Networks.
perfect. Yeah. Glenn hasn't spoken this morning.
Hi, Adrian. Oh Lord.
Hi.
By your soul. I was trying to be quiet, but you know.
I can't let anybody be quiet today, man. Oh my.
Yeah, like, I even love work. Oh, I even love work. Yes, what's the question again?
So we're just looking at the different layers of the defense in-depth model. So we spoke about identity and the network, and we just want one more layer that we protect using with the defense in-depth model.
Oh, Lord. I remember this thing now. Let's look. Endpoints. I hope not correct.
Endpoints. Yes, I think that would fall under the physical layer, so the various endpoints. And I think Oreen had mentioned it before he fell off, where there are some areas that probably you want to restrict, like physical access to your environment. You want to restrict like flash drive access to your devices, etc. So the physical or endpoints as well, yes, is another layer. You have been listening today, guys. I like that. Alrighty. So our time has elapsed. Thank you for joining today's session. I encourage you to keep coming to our sessions as we have super duper prizes at the end of the series. So stay tuned for what those will be and maximize your chances of getting one. And of course, for those of you who when we go through these, if you have any queries, if you have any basically queries or concerns about anything here that we have gone through, as well as any thing that you want to go through that is here. We have the recording available if you need to go through any of the steps that have been done in the session. And I look forward to seeing you for our file sync services session in the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. We'll be deploying a file sync server for a joint on-premise and Azure deployment. So stay tuned for that. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for joining and do have yourselves a lovely day.
And you too. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Okay then, bye-bye. All right.
Hi, Adrian.
Hi.
Hi, if you could send me the recording, that would be good.
Sure thing.
Thanks. But it wasn't always potentially have some clients you didn't read to us.
Oh, you have things going on over on your
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll send the recording.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.